Download the AllStar app. Make your picks for UFC fights, challenge your friends, level up and win prizes. Link in description. Get it now. All right, you guys can, right? So Leon Edwards, he's saying in an interview he did recently with Sky Sports, he's saying that he is not going to be coming back to defend his title in July in London, which I think the UFC wanted, you know what I mean? Because who else would headline a pay-per-view in London other than Leon Edwards, the welterweight champion who is from the UK, right?
Yeah.
He's the
Yeah.
champ, right? They just did a crazy numbers with the last pay-per-view, so he would be the perfect pick, right? And he said he's not coming back, and he's gonna come back in later at the end of the year, towards the end of the year in Abu Dhabi, the card in Abu Dhabi. What does that mean for the division, right? You got the UFC saying, you got Dana White saying that Colby Covington is next in line. He doesn't care what you think. He doesn't care what the fans think. Because he always used to say, like, or he still says, we put on the fucking fights that the fans want, right? And then it's clear, like, a lot of fans don't want this fight, right? But he's gonna put this fight on with Colby Covington. And he's in line, right? And they wanted to put it on in July in the UK, right? That would just be perfect. And I understand the story and all of that, and Colby Covington being hated, and I understand the promotional, you know, viewpoints of that, right? But now that fight is not likely happening, or is it going to happen? And Leon is just leveraging his position to get more money to sign it, because he's already been clear about, like, he doesn't want to sign the contract to fight Colby because Colby doesn't want he doesn't want Colby to get the title shot. He doesn't think he deserves it. Do you think these are mind games happening? And if it is mind games happening, what are the mind games? And after that, we'll discuss, like, if Leon is out until the end of the year, what are the options for the division? Sicko, let's start with you. Are these mind games?
I don't know if they're mind games more than Leon might be just frustrated. I think Leon's just saying, "Hey man, I became the champion. I got my glory. I got my moment. I got one of the biggest sound bites in the history of the UFC. I got one of the craziest moments in the history of the UFC. My stardom is finally where I always wanted it to be. Why is it that now that I get that, I'm being told who I'm going to fight and when I'm going to fight him and where I'm going to fight him? When did Colby become the guy who gets to make the decisions for me?" I think he's looking at it, and I feel like he's just being disrespected. I think he feels disrespected by the UFC, so I think he wants to play some hardball with them. I think he just is frustrated with the whole breakdown of Colby. It's the guy he doesn't want to fight for whatever reason. Even if you say, oh, he doesn't want to fight him because stylistically it's a bad matchup for him, I tend to think that he could have a lot of success against Colby. Maybe I'm the only person that thinks that, but I think he actually could have a lot of success against him. But I just feel like he just feels disrespected by the UFC, saying, "Hey, you have no say here. You're going to do exactly what we want you to do. You're going to fight when, where, and who we want you to, or we'll take your belt away." And Leon's just like, when does this happen to other champions? And when you just make it immediately one-sided in terms of negotiation for Colby. When did that happen? So I think Leon's just upset. I think he wants to play hardball with them. Unfortunately, when you do this, it doesn't always work out for the fighter, man. It almost never works out for the fighter whenever the fighter starts playing hardball with the UFC. I definitely see them moving on. I don't think they'll strip him, but I can see a situation where they do an interim title fight with Colby and whoever else is going to be the guy. But for Leon, it's like, cool, that works for me, because isn't that what Leon said he wants to happen anyway? Let Colby and Belal fight, or let Colby and Burns fight. Whoever feels like they have a claim, let them have a actual number one contender fight and then fight me. So for Leon, he's like, hey, man, it doesn't really matter. And being the champion seems to not really matter a whole lot anyway. So if you're going to strip me, strip me. I think that Leon deserves it, man. That stardom, like how does Jorge get a moment? How does Nate get a moment? How do all these guys get one singular moment, and now they get to dictate so much of their career? Where Leon has his moment, and it's like, no, do exactly what we say when we say it, or we're going to take this away from you. Seems a little weird to me.
The UFC, they have no problem stripping champions. You know what I mean? Like they will do it. And they have no problem putting together an interim title fight right after a champion has defended the title, right?
Mhm.
Jay Speck, what do you think is gonna happen?
I hope. I was saying this before. I
Don't
hope.
hope. What do you think is gonna happen?
I think Leon is gonna win. I think Leon wins this because there's nobody else that's propping open the doors for the UFC to make any kind of money in the European market right now. Nobody else of those European fighters. I mean, you can count, Connor if you want as Irish, but I see him more as an American at this point. There's nobody that's their bannerman. There's nobody that sells things over there. Darren Till is off saying he's retiring and then talking about boxing. So Leon has actually some leverage for once in his career where Mr. got to wait for 8 fights to even get a title shot. Like if any amount of power he's ever going to have in life is like right now. And I think he gets to fight somebody else. I think he doesn't want Colby and he's doing whatever it takes to not fight Colby. Not because like I think he's scared or doesn't want the matchup. Just I think he thinks it's complete bullshit that Colby's in this equation at all. So yeah, I think Dana White is gonna have to eat his words, and we're not gonna get Colby as the title, as the next title challenger.
I completely support Leon in what he's doing, right? And trying to he's justified. Let's just put it put it plain and simple. He's justified but what he's trying to do, right? He's trying to base title shot off merit and fighting for that, right? Since he is the champion now. Because why? He was screwed off for so long, right? And he was looked over for so long. So he knows like how it feels to be one of those fighters coming up to be looked over, right? And he's trying to push for that as somebody with some power. We don't know how much power that he really has. Will the UFC play with him? Yes, they will. They'll play ball with him for a short period, very short period. You know what I mean? They're gonna play ball with him to open the door slightly to negotiate something like extra for him to fight in July against Colby. And I feel like they are negotiating right now. And Leon being in the media, it helps him and it doesn't help him as well, right? Because all the stuff that's being said, they're going to be in the boardroom, in the meeting room, talking about this as well, right? Like how this is affecting perception. But the UFC doesn't care about perception, right? They just care about what they're making.
I have a question for you guys.
Mhm.
The UFC, how far back did they book London in July? Was this way before Leon's title defense against Kamaru? Like, did
I
they
don't think
already have
so.
this?
I don't think so.
If it was after,
Yeah.
wouldn't you assume that you would get with the champion from that area and say, hey, what date matches best for you?
Exactly, right? Like that would make sense. Completely make sense, right? Because if you have a pay-per-view, you want a title fight, especially when you got a champion from that area.
So my question is, did that conversation happen? And what did that conversation look like? Did Leon tell them, yeah, July would be great? And they're like, perfect, we got it. It's going to be Colby. And then Leon's like, nah, I'm not fighting in July if it's going to be Colby. Or did that conversation happen? Or did that conversation not happen? And they're like, hey, Leon, by the way, we think it'd be great if you fought in July. We already booked it. It's going to happen in London. And he's like, I never heard anything about that. This is news to me. I don't want to fight in July. And now they're sitting here not knowing what to do. Like I said, Dana has been talking a lot about the mistakes that they've been making lately. This could be another one. They might have booked the venue before they even talked to the guy who they would build the card for, which would be an idiotic mistake, in my opinion.
Yeah, definitely a big mistake. And it could give Leon some power, right? But at the same time, the UFC has no problem canceling events at the end of the day. If the people that are in power in that country that are putting on the events don't get the fights that they want to put on, they have no problem canceling events. We've seen events canceled in the past in other countries.
And I blame
You
it
know
on
what I
the
mean?
UFC, man. Even Patty's not good to go, right? Like he's still a ways out.
Yeah, but he's not a
Yeah.
pay-per-view draw, right? Like he's not fighting for titles.
It could
anything
just
like
still having him in London at least, even if he's not. I'm not saying to headline the card, but even if he's just in London, it could still do well for it being a London event. But that's what I'm saying. Even with him injured, it doesn't even make sense to book the venue right now unless they had the okay from Leon, unless they had that conversation with Leon, and Leon led them to believe he would be on that card for sure. Then I kind of put the blame on Leon. But if they didn't have that conversation, they missed big time with it. Because you're right. Like, where else do you go? There's not really. And then the guys that are good, or the guys that people would like to see there, that you would think the Darren Till is gone, the Aspinall still out, Patty Pimblett still out,
There you go.
Makayev just got his knee fucking torn to shreds. Like, they know who's gonna be on that card.
Let's just say that Leon is out until, not out as an injured, but he's just out. He's not going to compete until Abu Dhabi, which is at the end of the year. What do you do with the division? Do you put Colby against somebody for? Because I think number one contender fights don't make sense at all, because that doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean anything, right? Number one contender fights. We've seen so many number one contender fights that never materialize into title fights, right? This is the number one contender fight, and then the winner doesn't fight for the title next. We've seen that happen many times. But if you make an interim title, that means someone's walking around with the belt, right? So you do have to put that fight together at some point, right? Even if the interim title guy is defending that belt or something, you know what I mean? Some belt is being, and then it's like you force their hand. So to me, I think that you should have Gilbert Burns and Belal Muhammad fight each other for an interim title if Leon is dead set determined on not coming back until the end of the year. You have them fight for interim title that allows them to renegotiate their contracts, because this is a title fight, maybe make a little bit more money, most likely make a little bit more money, and then whoever wins holds the title, and then that title leads into the unification bout. Because look at what Volk did. Volk went up and fought Islam, and then on the same event they had Yair and Emmett fight for interim title, and then later on this year in July, who's fighting now? Because Volk didn't win the lightweight title. Volk and Yair, and you unify the titles, right? Why don't you just have the same situation? You know what I mean? Why would you not have that same situation? Does not agree with us because he just blacked out. Go ahead, Chase.
No, I initially was like, like, respect the sanctity of the number one like contendership. Like, I get what you're saying. They kind of oof around with the rankings and stuff. I'm an old school purist. Like, yes, I like the idea of having number one contender bouts, and then they fight, and it's like kind of meaningful. It's not a title bout, but you know what's gonna happen. There's a story. But since we were just talking last episode about the chaos, what are you gonna do with? And that's not a Colby Covington reference, but the chaos within that division because of Colby, that maybe Leon doesn't want to fight, not maybe, but it seems pretty clear. And then we have a worthy challenger in Belal. Plus, we're talking about the way Gilbert Burns feels, and him, threatening, hey, if I don't get my shot, I'm out of here. What a great way, John, to fix all that shit. So I was initially against this whole interim belts, because in general, the word interim belt and the interim belt situation kind of just turns me off. But with all that being said, that is actually the perfect solution. You basically cut Colby right out of the story. You let Burns and Belal, who Belal needs to be part of this equation. I know he's always the last talked about one, but he needs to be. So it's perfect. And it gives Burns purpose. And like you said, the bridge is now made to the championship for that undisputed, and wow, that good solution.
And 288, they need a fight. So won't you just add another title fight to that? 288 needs another fight.
It makes sense, guys. It makes a whole lot of sense that would happen. But Colby's the prince who's promised. Like, he's gonna fight for an interim bout or the bout itself. It's gonna happen. There's nothing else around it. Whatever happened, whatever was going on behind the scenes that we don't know about, something happened. But Colby was promised. Dana White said it would have been Colby Usman 3 if Usman won. He's
Dana
gonna
White
fight
is
for the
a
interim
liar.
belt.
Dana White is a liar. He's historically a liar.
Dana White plays with the
Something's
media as
going
well.
on.
Dana White
Something's going
does.
on.
You know,
For
Dana
him to
White
be
this week, he
hard.
was saying that, oh, you guys need to stop doing this and this. It causes drama. But Dana White does the
He's the
same
one who put
shit.
it out. Yeah.
Yeah, he
No.
does the same shit. You know what I mean?
Well, I
Like,
thought it was hilarious that he was the one, like he was saying you guys are doing this, but I'm like, it was your soundbite that they were like, you didn't have to speak about John Jones and like you didn't have to speak about him. But anyway, that's a different topic. But
yeah.
I don't think that it's gonna be anybody besides Colby.
You know what would be
I
funny?
really don't.
If Colby does fight for the interim title and he does win the interim title and then he fights for the title and he loses the actual title, the undisputed title, and then he would be I think the first
Double
fighter to
interim.
ever like hold 2 interim titles but never actually hold the actual title.
Yeah, because
That's
Dustin was just one, right? Dustin was just one interim bout. He never got a second interim bout.
Yeah, it's
I feel like
I don't
that's
know,
very
man.
Colby
It's
Covington thing to happen. I feel like that's very possible.
I just think
Yeah.
that it's going to be Colby and one of those guys, and then whoever is left out is going to be given a fat bag to fight Shavkat. I think that's exactly how it's going to play out.